All right, so I'm working on my van. I'm gonna move my kitchen that was here higher up, pull out here to being there on the left side, driver's side. And then I also lowered something I've been thinking about basically since I put this in. I originally built my bed frame with enough space to put one of those black and yellow 27-gallon tubs underneath, but I never actually used it that way. So we just throw random stuff under there instead, and so I want to change that. And so I've lowered this to be flush with the wheel well. So that basically these boards, the mattress sit on, are going to be flush with the wheel well. And we're close enough there too. So that's where I'm at. And I'm just going to cut these legs that were already there, but now I'm just going to cut them down and get this put back together. And I'm going to be glad to have this extra, well, comparatively extra roof height. My older kids are getting tall. One of them is about nearly as tall as me now. So basically, the more height we could get, the better. My wife and I haven't camped in the van ourselves too much. Sometimes I do with the little ones. There's enough room. There was enough room for that for me. But this will be more comfortable if my wife and I want to sleep in here while the kids sleep in the rooftop tent. So just different options. This should be a little more comfortable. And based on how I've been using it the last couple of years, in this configuration, I think I'll just enjoy having the headroom versus random stuff space. One of the big limitations I've always had with this van is that the rear air conditioning unit is mounted basically in the middle of the floor, as you can see. It's off to the passenger side, but it is the middle of the floor, unfortunately. And anyway, I'll still have room to put in something here. I'm going to add a drawer and potentially like a table, just countertop to slide out. I think there's room for that. Originally, these 2x3s met in a square. Now I'm just going to leave that out there because the boards are going to cover that anyway. But I did have to move them in to clear the wheel well. So I'm just going to cut these and got them measured up, hopefully. This isn't super exact, but it's close enough, and that might bother some people. Or if you have more skill, then you're like, dude, that's not how you do it. But anyway, this has worked great for almost 2 years now in this configuration. So just gonna adjust it a little bit. And one of the great things about having your own van, doing your own van builds and whatnot, is that hey, if you want to change something or add something, you're not hacking on a Sportsmobile or some super expensive van, but you can just kind of adjust things as you go. And I've definitely done that as my family's grown, and we've changed our camping patterns and the amount of people we need to fit, sleep, and have seat belts and all that. So that's the wonderful thing about doing some of your own van work. Even if it's not the highest end output, if it works for you in the most efficient way possible, that is what matters. All right, well, I finally gotten to a point where I have legs holding up the bed and a couple screws in each one, and it's relatively even. So those are the things that matter for me. There's definitely some trial and error. I had to undo and redo a couple times some of these, not just to get them to sit right at this one. This one's still floating a little bit, but at least now it's touching the ground. All right, so at first I tried 10.5 inches, as I mentioned, but that was just too low. And these, even though it seemed like it was gonna fit, when I actually got both sides, front and back, obviously there's 4 corners, but front and back, at that height, these boards were being pressed up on the carpet underneath on the wheel well. So ultimately I changed it to 12 inches, and it gives me a tiny bit of clearance. Obviously you sit on or lay on it, it's gonna sag a little bit. So didn't get that last 1.5 inches that I wanted, but this will work. This is fine, and it will be a big improvement on what we had, and we'll basically still have all the same useful space. Definitely recommend drilling pilot holes into the wood first. I did all this with just, you know, old cheap stuff, but a couple cheapy guys like this clamp from Harbor Freight, you know, just holding these where you want them, at the height you want them, specifically if you're working by yourself. We'll just get these boards put back down. I actually have to cut one now to fit around. This is where the gas filler neck is. Fuel filler neck goes behind there. So I'm gonna have to cut a little bit around that one. Also, if you're not super handy, but you want to try working on your vehicle, building something out, the bed is a good place to start because it's not load bearing. You know, it's not like trying to do something external that could potentially fly off into traffic if you did it wrong. Things like these little flip up shelves, you know, building a little piece to slide out. You know, none of it's going to be exposed to the elements or to the outside world. So as you can see, the frame is simple. I really left the top as it was and only took the legs off and rearranged them, and also cut them down so that they're lower. So you see I have 3 legs on each front and rear. I do not have legs in the middle, but these middle ones are inset, so plenty of support. It feels very rigid when you're on it. So in these gaps behind the wheel well by the back doors, I'm hoping to be able to build a little storage cubby that will be accessible from the top, and then enclose it, kind of like a little secret compartment. We'll see. That's my hope. Have another slide out here, potentially something up above that's mounted just below this rail, and I was thinking like just a table surface that could come out that didn't have anything stored in it or on it, so it was very thin. All right, here's the state I've gotten the van to. The bed is once again put back together. It looks great. My wife and kids jumped in here, well, the little ones anyway, and they were immediately like, oh my gosh, this feels so much bigger. So glad that the extra roof height is noticeable, even though I didn't really lower it that much. I think about 6 inches maybe. So still have plenty of room to add a big drawer right there, and then some cargos, maybe some little cargo boxes under there that'll be accessible from above through the underneath the mattress, through the bed. And drawer slide. I've been looking at different options. A lot of YouTubers have a lot of ideas. Very few people seem to be doing this for vans. It seems to be all trucks and SUVs, but I'm gonna figure out my best path. Okay, so another project I worked on was getting these air hoses kind of permanently mounted into this board. In the old days, they were mounted, they were run and routed, I should say, through the wall panels, and there are little vents now where the bed is, so that they're blocked. But I ran them here, and this is looking good. It's a piece of wood, so it's gonna keep items from shifting from under the seats, like backpacks and kids' toys and all that, from going in and out from behind the seat and under the bed, which from this side is not really accessible unless you kind of get down and dig for things. So it's solving 2 problems: keeping things out that I don't want to end up back there or just lost underneath the bed, and also the air vents now can blow their cool air without getting blocked by just stuff being on the ground in front of them. So I'm excited about that. It's very simple. I just drilled 4 holes with this Harbor Freight, what do they call these things? Hole saw kit. So that totally worked. It was easy. So just a simple way of just cleaning up underneath the bed area since I've been working on that. So even though this is kind of dead space, I know that would bother some people, and they'd probably just take out this air conditioning. Because we have kids and we do drive long distances, I gotta keep the air conditioning. It does work, so I don't want to move it. I don't want to mess with it. I don't really have the resources to evacuate it and cut the lines and move them anywhere. It's one of those things that would be nicer if this wasn't the setup, but since it is and it works, I'm not gonna mess with it. So this is the end result. If you're a woodworker, look away, look away. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just really happy with how this turned out for what I was working with. Mostly I was trying not to spend any money, and I only ended up spending about 15 bucks on like more 2x3s and a couple of pieces of wood. Like, 1x2? I don't know. Fortunately I had this stuff laying around in the shed. So it's like 1-inch plywood, and I just sanded everything a lot. Spent a lot of time sanding, so that kind of took away from the value of not purchasing it. But they work. So as you can see, I did end up sandwiching the slide out plywood in between, you know, effectively like these are 2x3s and little 1x2. So they're not tracks in the sense of metal drawer slides, but they are tracks in the sense that these slide out and without feet will hold themselves up. And I'm really happy about this because it was super simple. You can see it's basically just two 2x3s sandwiching the board together, and then the bed frame legs are holding it in on this side, obviously on each side, and then front and back. Yep, that's how it's turned out. I'm very happy. You can see how simple I just made, effectively sandwich two pieces of you know, whether it be 2x3s or in this case 2x3s and 1x2. On this side it's 2x2 and a 2x3, and on that side a 2x3 and a 2x3. Just sandwich these pieces of plywood in there, and then effectively that's your drawer. You know, these are like your drawer sides, and then the pieces of wood underneath are the drawer slides. So it's just sliding on the wood there. So as you can see, try to demonstrate this one-handed. There it goes. All right, and I can do this, pull these out one-handed now. I just cut with the jigsaw and then sanded handles. Very simple. Like I said, if you're a woodworker, look away. But I basically reused stuff I had, and I was very happy about that. Spent as little money as possible to just change this up and make it more usable. So now I have a ton of food prep space or tailgating space. So I have that there, and they'll come out even further if I want, but don't need to. Let's see, here we go. You can see all this space now. So that light. Yep, so look at all that. Man, I'm so stoked on that. So I'll just do the stove there. That's where the stove will be, with the pots and pans will stay in there, because it'll be kept in by these wood sides there. And this is just a workspace because everything will have to be put on it. Nothing can be stored up there. So that's what's going on. All right. Very stoked on this. I can't wait to use it in this format. So if you're trying to do something similar, what I ended up doing was making the gap exactly the height of the plywood. And then I had to sand the edges, the bottom and top edge, so it would slide easier. And if your wood isn't warped and you get the measurement right, it should just slide in and out. You know, this one I gave it a tiny gap. I don't know what that is, a 1/16 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. On these ones, I was kind of over cautious. This is the first one I did, so it slants a little. You can see it has a little give, but it's still fully functional. Like, it functions exactly the same as that one. It just has a tiny bit more give, but when you're standing looking at it, you can't tell. But you could add a foot. I used to have a screw-in pipe on my other one that was a leg. So if you're gonna have something heavy on there, you could just add a foot that you screw in to the bottom. But I don't think I'm gonna need one. We'll see. I have the stuff for it in case I do. But super easy in this format. I'm very happy with this. So you don't necessarily need a $150 5-foot drawer slide or 2 sets of that because you can just screw a bunch of 2x3s together and clamp them down, and that can be your slide. All right, hope that helps.